The quiet strength of aging alone, stories of resilience most people never hear. Some people grow old surrounded by noise, laughter in the kitchen, voices in the hallway, the soft chaos of family coming and going. Their lives are stitched with company, not always deep but always present, and there are others. There are those who greet the morning alone, who pour one cup of coffee and sit in the same chair they've sat in for years, who hear nothing but the hum of the fridge and the creak of the floorboards as they shuffle across. They don't wake to voices, they wake to silence, and somehow they keep waking up. This isn't the story that makes headlines. It's not the kind of aging that people romanticize. But it's real, it's sacred, and it deserves to be told. Because aging alone, by circumstance or by choice, is not a failure. It's not a punishment. It's a path. One that's harder in some ways, quieter in others, but full of a kind of strength most people never stop long enough to see. You don't really notice it until you've lived it, until the holidays come and go and no one knocks on the door, until you go days without speaking aloud except to the cashier or the dog, until you fix the broken lamp yourself because there's no one else to call, until the photos on the wall become more present than the people in your life. And yet, there's a kind of dignity in this kind of life, a quiet, steady power in facing each day alone, not with bitterness, but with resolve, a beauty in creating, rhythm where there's no one watching, in caring for a space that only you will notice, in loving a life that belongs solely to you. Some may look at that and see sadness, but I don't. I see courage, because it takes something deep in the soul to live without applause, to make meaning without conversation, to keep showing up for yourself when no one else does. This video is for those people, the ones whose strength doesn't show up in loud declarations or crowded tables, the ones who age with grace and grit in homes where only one toothbrush sits in the holder, the ones whose resilience has never been celebrated, but quietly lived. One meal, one memory, one morning at a time. You are not invisible. You are not forgotten. You are not weak. You are living proof that even in solitude there can be fullness. Even in silence there can be faith. Even in the smallest daily acts there can be power. So today let's honor that. Let's talk about the kind of strength that doesn't need to be loud to be real. Let's tell the stories that too often go unheard, the quiet stories of growing older, alone, and still standing. People often assume that aging alone means something went wrong, that you were abandoned, forgotten, that something broke somewhere, a marriage, a family, a life plan. And while that may be true for some, it's far from the whole story. Some people do end up alone through loss. A spouse of 40 years passes away and suddenly you're learning how to breathe in a world where the air feels different. Some lose touch with their children, not out of malice, but from the slow drift of years and distance and misunderstandings that no one quite knew how to fix. Others outlive their friends one by one until the phone stops ringing. But there's another story too, one people talk about even less. Some people grow old alone because they chose to, not because they didn't love, but because they loved differently, because they valued freedom, because their lives didn't fit the traditional script, because they found meaning in solitude. Long before the world saw it as something to pity, they built careers, communities, gardens, art, bookshelves full of journals. They didn't miss out. They simply lived outside the mold. And some, of course, never intended to grow old alone. Life just happened that way. Divorce came. Children didn't. Or they did, but the relationships didn't last. People moved. Health changed. Plans shifted. And before they knew it, they were lighting their own birthday candles and clapping alone when they blew them out. But none of that means failure. It means life. Real, unpredictable, uncurated life. There's a quiet strength in refusing to let your story be defined by who stayed or who didn't. There's a power in choosing to keep going, even when the house echoes. Aging alone doesn't make a person tragic. Sometimes it makes them braver than anyone else in the room. There's something sacred about the first few minutes of a day, especially when you're the only one there to greet them. No one sees the way you ease yourself out of bed, stretch the stiffness from your legs, and walk slowly toward the kitchen. No one hears the soft hum of the kettle or the familiar creak of the floorboard that's always been a little uneven. No one notices how you linger by the window, coffee in hand, looking out into a world that seems a little too fast now, but still beautiful. These are the quiet rituals that hold you together, the kind people forget to count, the kind that don't make it into social media posts or holiday letters, but they matter, because when you live alone, it's these small, steady things that give your life shape. Opening the blinds, feeding the cat, reading the newspaper front to back even if you disagree with half of it, watering the same houseplant you've kept alive longer than some friendships, taking your pills with a sip of juice and a whispered prayer that today will be gentle. They may seem small to others, but they are not small to you. These routines are proof that you're still choosing to engage with the day, even when no one else will see it. That you still believe in rhythm, in care, in order. That even without witnesses, your life deserves structure and softness. There is a quiet kind of self-respect in brushing your hair and putting on real clothes, even if you have nowhere to go. There's honor in making your bed, in cooking yourself breakfast, in saying out loud, "Good morning." Even if no one answers, you do it because you matter. And not just when someone's watching, you matter in the quiet. You matter in the stillness. You matter in the rising of the sun and the way you meet it with steadiness and dignity. So don't underestimate the power of your morning routine, because each act is a quiet declaration. I'm still here. I'm still living. I'm still choosing to show up for my life. And that all by itself is a kind of strength the world would do well to notice. For a long time, your life might have been defined by others. By the voices, the needs, the expectations of people who circled around you like a tide, sometimes comforting, sometimes overwhelming. You were the caretaker, the spouse, the friend everyone leaned on, the sibling who kept things together, the parent who always answered the phone. And then, slowly or suddenly, the crowd thinned. Maybe the children grew up and moved away. Maybe your partner passed or left, or stopped meeting you emotionally. Maybe your friends faded, not out of cruelty, but out of life's inevitable pace. Suddenly, your calendar was quieter, your phone rang less, and the house, once full of noise and obligation, now hummed with stillness. But here's something the world rarely says. You didn't vanish when the crowd did. In fact, sometimes, it's only when the crowd disappears that you finally get to hear your own voice. There's a strange kind of freedom that comes with solitude, a slow, patient rediscovery of who you are when no one else is shaping the story. You remember the books you used to love, the music you used to hum, the thoughts you pushed aside to make space for everyone else. You learn how to take up space again, not with volume, but with presence. For some, aging alone becomes the first time in decades they don't have to perform or explain or manage someone else's emotions first. And in that space, something sacred returns. You, your laughter, your stillness, your creativity, your prayer life, your pace. Not the version of you others knew, but the version that's been waiting patiently beneath the layers for room to breathe. Losing the crowd doesn't mean you've lost your worth. It may mean you're finally ready to live more honestly than ever before. There are losses that people understand. A spouse dies. A friend passes. A parent slips away in a hospital bed. People send cards. They bring casseroles. They call, at least for a while. But there's another kind of grief that doesn't have a name. The kind you carry in silence every day. The kind you don't post about. Don't explain, don't want to burden others with, like the quiet ache of waking up in a house once filled with voices. The moment you realize you haven't been hugged in weeks, the empty seat at the dinner table that no one asks about anymore. The friend who used to call every Friday and suddenly never did again. The child who became distant. The love you almost had. The version of your life you thought you'd be living by now. This grief is shapeless. It doesn't bring flowers or condolences. But it's real, and it's heavy. You carry it through grocery aisles when you pick up one apple instead of two, through doctor's visits where you fill out the forms alone, through holidays that sneak up on you like ghosts, through church pews that feel too wide, and still, you carry it, with grace, with strength, with a softness that would break the heart of anyone who truly saw it. This kind of grief is not loud, it doesn't demand attention, but it shapes your days. And that too is a form of resilience. Because to grieve without recognition, to keep loving, hoping, breathing after so many goodbyes, takes a kind of courage the world rarely applauds. You may not talk about it often, but your strength speaks for itself. Every time you get out of bed, every time you cook for one, every time you smile at a stranger, even with a tender heart. So today, let's honor that grief, the invisible kind. Let's say it matters, because you matter. And the quiet way you keep going despite the weight you carry is one of the most powerful kinds of strength there is. Strength isn't always what you think it is. It isn't always a raised voice, a triumphant speech, or a visible victory. Sometimes strength is quieter than that. Sometimes it looks like making yourself a cup of tea when no one else is coming over. Like getting dressed even when you have nowhere to go. Like reaching for the phone to schedule a doctor's appointment, knowing you'll have to drive yourself and sit in the waiting room alone. It looks like taking out the trash, fixing the toilet handle, shoveling the snow, filling your own prescriptions, carrying your own groceries up the stairs one careful step at a time. These aren't grand gestures. They don't make headlines. No one claps. But they are moments of quiet triumph, of resilience lived in daily tasks that for most people go unseen. And they matter, because when you live alone, there's no one else to hand the task to, no one to remind you, no one to share the load. It's just you, and the choice to keep showing up again and again. Some days it's easy, most days it's not, and still you do it. That is strength, not the kind you flex in a gym, not the kind that gets recognized in a eulogy or a family slideshow, but the kind that builds itself over time, through faithfulness, through routine, through refusal to give up. If you've ever washed dishes by yourself while blinking back tears, you know this strength. If you've eaten dinner while the house stood still, you know this strength. If you've smiled at the neighbor even though your heart felt heavy, you know this strength. You may not think of yourself as strong, but look at you. You're still here, still trying, still living. And that, quiet as it may be, God is nothing short of heroic. One of the greatest myths about aging alone is that life becomes empty. That if you're not surrounded by people, you must not have anything left to give. But I've seen the opposite. I've seen older adults plant seeds of purpose in the most unlikely places. A woman who feeds the neighborhood cats every morning and knows each one by name. A man who writes letters to strangers in nursing homes who never get mail. Someone who picks up trash on their street every day, not because anyone asked, but because they care what their neighborhood looks like. Someone who learns how to paint at 73 and gifts their watercolors to new neighbors. A widow who makes soup for anyone sick on her block. A grandfather who calls his granddaughter every Tuesday just to say, "You're doing great." These are not flashy acts, they won't go viral, but they are deeply meaningful. Because purpose doesn't always look like a job or a platform. Sometimes, it looks like simply deciding that today you'll be kind, that today you'll pay attention to what's around you, that today, your life, even in solitude, will matter to someone else. It might be the way you show up for a friend with a phone call, the way you tend your garden and share your tomatoes with a neighbor, the way you show younger people what it looks like to live with intention, grace, and presence. You don't need a crowded house to make an impact. You just need a willing heart. Sometimes the deepest purpose isn't found in the spotlight, but in the shadow of quiet lives lived well. And the beautiful thing about aging alone is that you get to choose. You get to decide what matters to you, where to give your time, how to leave your mark, how to love, not loudly but meaningfully. So if you're wondering whether your life still counts, let me assure you, it does. Not because of what you produce, Not because of how many people surround you, but because of the quiet love you still give. Even when no one sees it. There's an image we've all been sold. A house filled with grandchildren, the smell of dinner in the oven, multiple generations around the table laughing as the sun sets outside. It's a beautiful scene, but it's not the only kind of life that holds meaning. Not everyone gets the picture-perfect ending. Not everyone grows old surrounded by family. And yet, many still grow old with purpose, with richness, with a fullness that no photograph could capture. Because you don't need a full house to have a full life. You don't need constant conversation to be deeply in touch with who you are. You don't need someone sitting beside you to know that your presence still matters. Fullness comes in different forms. It comes in the book you reread for the 5th time because it still makes you smile. In the way you tend your space with care, not because anyone's coming over, but because you're worth living in beauty. It comes in the quiet confidence that you know yourself now, in a way you didn't when you were younger and busier and more distracted by everyone else's needs. Fullness can look like making breakfast the way you like it, without compromise. Going for a walk and noticing the sky in a way you never used to. Writing your memories in a notebook, not because someone asked, but because your story is worth remembering. Praying out loud in an empty room and feeling like someone still hears you. You are not less whole because you eat alone. You are not less human because no one calls you today. You are not less alive because your house is quiet. You are still here, still making choices, still building something sacred, one ordinary day at a time. And maybe, just maybe, there is a kind of life that only gets this deep when lived in solitude. This is for you. You who wakes up and faces the day without anyone there to see it. You who still takes care of things, even when no one says thank you. You who quietly carries memories, grief, joy, history, all inside one heart. You who has outlived people you thought you never could live without. You who shows up for your own life, even when it feels like no one else is watching. You may not hear it often, but your strength is breathtaking, not because it's loud, not because it's flashy, but because it's real, because it's steady, because it endures. You are not forgotten, not by the people who love you, even if they don't always say it, not by the world, even if it moves too fast to notice you, and not by God, especially not by Him. He sees you in the morning light that spills across your kitchen floor, in the hands that fold laundry and wipe counters and light candles in quiet rooms, in the long, faithful days you choose to live, one decision at a time. You are not invisible. You are not alone in the deepest sense, and your life, even now, holds immeasurable value. So keep going. Keep showing up for yourself. Keep honoring the life you've built and the person you've become, because even in solitude, even in stillness, even in a house that holds only one voice, you are living something beautiful, something holy, something whole, and someone out here right now sees it, hears it, celebrates it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your quiet strength. You are not forgotten. You are deeply, deeply seen.